and even until sunset he kept exerting himself to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, "Recognize, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed." Then the king gave orders, and Daniel was brought in and cast into the lion's den. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Your God, whom you constantly serve, will himself deliver you." A stone was brought and laid over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring, and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing would be changed in regard to Daniel. Then the king went off to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no entertainment was brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. Then the king arose at dawn, at the break of day, and went in haste to the lion's den. When he had come near the den to Daniel, he cried out with troubled voice. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel spoke to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, inasmuch as I was found innocent before him, and also toward you, O king, I have committed no crime." Then the king was very pleased and gave orders for Daniel to be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. The king then gave orders, and they brought those men who had maliciously accused Daniel, and they cast them, their children and their wives, into the lion's den. And they had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language who were living in all the land, "May your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom men are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and enduring forever, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, and his dominion will be forever. He delivers and rescues and performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also delivered Daniel from the power of the lions." So this Daniel enjoyed success in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So, Daniel, I want to just bring us up to speed on Daniel. Now, Daniel was a captive. He was one of the Jews who went into captivity, and he started off as a young guy interpreting a dream for King Nebuchadnezzar, where there was a big statue made of different metals, and Nebuchadnezzar was like the head of gold, and after him there was the breast and the arms of silver, and then the belly and the thighs of brass, and then 2 iron legs and feet part of iron, part of clay. A little stone comes and hits the image, destroys it. And the bottom line was, yeah, you're the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar, but after you there'll come another empire, then another empire, and in the end, the little stone, Jesus, is going to come back and destroy all this nonsense of human society and establish the kingdom of God on the earth forever. Well, Nebuchadnezzar sort of accepted that, and then he sort of balks against it a bit because he goes and builds another statue, a statue only of gold, like he was the head of gold, and he said, no, I don't like the idea that I'm going to die, that I'm going to give this over to somebody else. No, I'm going to have another statue. It's all going to be me. I'm going to live forever. That's why you read here what we just read in Daniel 6, when they addressed the king, they had to say, "O king, live forever," because he was supposed to be God, and of course the God doesn't die. But by insisting on that you've got to address me as "O king, live forever," they were really saying, we don't want to go with this idea of a succession of empires, that I too shall pass away, and all I've fought for and all I've built up is going to pass away. Well, he makes this great big gold image and says whoever doesn't fall down and worship it is going to be thrown into a fiery furnace. And all the Jews do fall down and worship it, apart from 3. It doesn't say about Daniel. Whether he lost his faith or whether he was sick or whether he ran away, we don't know. I suspect he might have just had a hiccup in his faith there. Anyway, these 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, who wouldn't fall down and worship the image, they're thrown into a furnace of fire, but they come out and everyone inspects them and they've not been burnt. And so the king says, oh, the God of Israel must be the true God. And time goes on, and then in chapter 5 you have this situation where there's another king, Belteshazzar, and he's very proud and thinking his kingdom is going to last forever, and then writing appears on the wall that says your days are numbered and the Medes and Persians are going to take your kingdom. And it happens that night that Darius comes and takes the kingdom away from this guy. In other words, the image that Daniel explained at the beginning of his book comes true, that the head of gold, the Babylonians, are replaced by the Medes and the Persians. And all these kings struggle against that. They don't want that. Well, we read at the end of chapter 5 that Darius the Mede takes the kingdom from the Babylonians, and now he's establishing himself. And he establishes all these rulers, these various satraps they're called, and he wants to make Daniel the senior one, because of course Daniel had been the one who was saying that no, Babylon's going to fall to the Medes and Persians, so they thought Daniel must be a good guy, he's on our team, he's on our side. So they elevate Daniel, and you notice all the way through it says they do so because of his integrity. Even his enemies said, you can't find anything on this guy apart from relating to his God. Well, that's a great, talk about integrity, you know, can that be said of us, the folks that we mix with, that no, that guy, apart from his religion, apart from his Christianity or whatever, he's absolutely straight. There's no speck on that guy. It's a great challenge, really. Anyway, so these guys then come to the king and say, why don't you make a law that no one can pray to anyone apart from you, because you're God, right, for 30 days. In other words, they're saying, you establish yourself. Well, Darius had just taken the kingdom, he just kicked out the Babylonians and established the Medes in power. Yeah, he wanted to show that I'm boss, so he said, yeah, okay, that's good. Well, I've read this story so many times to my children over the years, and in the children's Bibles, Darius is always painted as this kindly old guy who gets a bit manipulated by these young fellas. But I don't think that that was the case. The guy has just won a great military campaign against Babylon. He's now establishing his power. He's obviously a powerful man and a smart guy. He's not some stumbling old fool. And he knew that Daniel prayed to God, because he says at the end of it, he comes to the lion's den and says, well, Daniel, you who serve your God continually, can he save you now? In other words, yeah, I know that Daniel always prays to God. So why then does he sign this decree when he knows Daniel prays to God, and he labours to try to get out of it when he realises that, yeah, I've got to put Daniel to death now, throw him to the lions? Why does he sign it? Another question, if indeed he's this all-powerful ancient monarch, why didn't he just change it? Okay, these guys got him the sign that, yeah, anyone who prays to another god apart from you, O king, is going to be thrown to the lake, to the den of lions. And there's the king running around trying to change it. He can't do it. He's a king. Of course he could change it. It would require him, of course, to swallow his pride and to say, yeah, okay, yeah, I did sign that, but seeing I'm God, it's not supposed to be God, you know, seeing that I'm all-powerful, we're just not going to do that. No, we're not going to kill Daniel. And it's similar to the death of John the Baptist with the great powerful leader then of those days, that the girl dances in front of Herod, and he's all very impressed with her, says, "I'll give you anything you want, up till half the kingdom." She goes to her mum and says, "What should I ask?" And she says, "The head of John the Baptist on a plate." Ooh, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to kill John the Baptist, but because he's said it in front of company, he can't take it back, so they send the executioner and cut John's head off. It's all similar. The simple takeaway lesson is pride. Pride, setting people up in a situation where in a momentary lapse of reason and judgment, you make a mistake. And who hasn't done that? We have all made mistakes like this. We have all had momentary lapses of reason, judgment, or whatever. And the reason you can't get out of it is because of pride. In the days before GPS, some of you don't remember those days, but there were days before GPS. You'd be driving around and you'd go wrong, and you knew you were wrong, and you kept on driving. Well, this is me, I'm sure it's you as well, but you kept on driving, and you knew on one half of your brain, I should stop, do a 3-point turn and go back. This is going nowhere. No, I'm going to keep going a bit further. And you can go for miles. I've driven miles like that, knowing I'm going the wrong way, really. This is definitely not the way. But I can't turn around. And eventually you do have to turn around and go back. But why don't we? Why can't we say, yeah, well, I made a mistake there. Yeah, I took the left turn. I should have carried straight, shouldn't I? Because of pride. And we might tend to think pride is someone else's problem, but pride is in all of us. And we don't want to turn around and go back. And it's the same here. You see this king, one half of his brain, Daniel's a wonderful guy. Well, he wanted to elevate him to be the second in command of his empire, making him one of the most powerful people on earth. And of course, there's going to be jealousy issues, aren't there? All the other guys think, oh, well, he's a Jew, you know, I should be up there. All right, let's catch him out. Well, the king knew he was being manipulated, so why doesn't he just say, yeah, no, guys, we're not doing that. We're not going to throw Daniel to the den of lions. Because of pride, and this is our problem. How can you humble yourself? Well, there's no button on your brain that you can press to sort of just bring yourself down a bit. There should be, but there isn't, or if there is, we don't press it. And you wonder why life kind of, for a believer, why life doesn't always work out as it should have done for me, as I consider, as it could have done, as it ought to have done, actually. Why? Well, this is the hand of God, to bring us down, to give us this humility. Not that God is trying to push you down in a mean, horrible way. Peter says, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. And so you've got to get with the program. You've got to realise that's how life's going to go. That life is not going to just be glorious victory after glorious victory. And people go to church typically and say, how was your week? Oh, it was awesome. How are you? Oh, awesome. No, I mean, crap. You know, I mean, no life is awesome day by day. Come on, get real. It's not like that. Not because God is mean, and not because there aren't many blessings in the Christian life, but because also we are brought down that he might exalt us. This is the meaning of baptism, that you go into the water, you are covered in water, that's like death with Jesus, and you come up out of the water, the resurrection, the new life. And that process goes on, that you lose, that you might win. You lose, you win. You die, you come alive. And finally, when Jesus comes back, for all those who have been baptized into Jesus, there will be this great exaltation, this lifting up, this rising of us up from the grave and ultimately to his nature, to the everlasting life. Well, this history, I mean, the Bible in one sense is history. And history might be bunk, as they say, in a secular sense, or of passing cultural interest, maybe. But the history that God's recorded is not. This is all there because we see ourselves in the incidents that he's recorded. The king who can't humble himself in the eyes of others to say, no, let us not do this. Let us change. And especially with Daniel. I mean, The command was, don't pray to any god, and if you get caught, you shall be thrown to the lions. Look, if that had been me, I would have thought, I'm going to keep on praying to God, but I shall do so quietly. But Daniel opens his windows. Now, they didn't have glass windows, they had wooden windows. He opens his windows, as he normally does, and prays toward Jerusalem. When the obvious thing to do would be to keep your windows shut, or to open your windows, but pray to God quietly. When the children went to school, we said, you must thank God for your food, you must say your prayers. Like, well, how can a kid, sort of thank God in front of all the other kids, like, thank you, God, for my food, amen. No, I said, no, you don't have to do that. Just pray with your eyes open. That's all right. You don't have to let the other kids know that you're praying. You just pray with your eyes open. Well, that's what I told my kids, and that's what I do. And if I had been in this situation, that's what I would have done. And I thought, look, if you pray to a god other than the king, well, you're going to be thrown to the den of lions. Okay, I will just pray in my mind. Because you can pray in your heart. You don't need to do the formal stuff. You don't need to, visibly pray. And you certainly don't need to advertise the fact you're praying by opening your windows. Now, Daniel was a sharp guy. He knew, obviously, these other fellows were watching him. You can just be like that, can't you? But he doesn't. So I think you see there another question of living before God on different levels. If he had just prayed quietly in his mind, would that have been a sin? No. But he chose the higher level. And I don't think it is so that it's all black and white, that God says, I want this act of obedience, and if you don't do it, well, goodbye. I think there are ranges of serving him, and that is really tacitly, I think, accepted by Jesus in the parable, where he says that he gives what he calls talents. And I think he means not abilities, but weights of metals to each of his servants. And they all go away and they all make something of them. One of them trades his talent and he gets another 5. And Jesus will come back and say, well done, you made 5 talents, here's 5 sitters. Another guy says, well, you gave me 1 and I made 2. Well done, you'll have 2 sitters. So I think that tacitly accepts that there will be a range of response amongst God's people. Some people are going to make more of the gospel, of God's truth, than someone else, but that's okay. You're all going to be saved if you have accepted his grace. Or in the parable of the labourers in the vineyard. He goes out, in the parable, the man goes out in the marketplace, picks up some guy to work in the vineyard all day, fellow works for, 12 hours. And he gets a penny. At the end of the day, another guy is picked up to go and work in the harvest in the afternoon. He only works a few hours, and he gets the penny. In other words, people are going to make different amounts out of what God gives them. But that doesn't affect salvation. And as Paul says, talking about how we shall be eternally, he says we shall be like stars, and one star differs from another in glory. Somebody is going to shine brighter. I guess the Apostle Paul, I guess the prophet Daniel, is going to shine as a brighter star in eternity than myself. I would have prayed with my eyes open, not given any hint. Now, there were other Jews with Daniel. There were his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. There were loads of Jews in Babylon. And yet, apparently, none of them did what Daniel did. So when you go for that higher level, it's very lonely. What is maybe the hardest thing in the Christian life is to make a commitment to God or to Jesus when other people who are believers are not doing that. It may be, let's take baptism. Other people might say, well, you don't need to be baptised, just forget it. Well, it's a bit inconvenient to get your body wet and you might mess my hair up and all the rest of it. No, I'm going to do it. People think, oh, really? That's different. You're being different. Or it could be a matter of personal conscience. I will not drink alcohol when so-and-so is around because I know he struggles with alcohol, and I won't drink in front of him because I don't want to give him the possibility to slip into getting drunk again. There's nothing wrong if you do drink alcohol in front of him. But if you take that higher level, it's like, ooh, so you are, Duncan, you reckon you're some sort of super holy, sort of pious guy. I'd never be able to sell myself as a religious, pious guy, because I'm not, but anyway, you know what I'm saying? You can do something that, okay, is different. Let's say a higher level. And it's very lonely when you do that, because other people will not think that that's the sensible thing to do. It's the same here. None of the other Jews agreed with Daniel, it seems. They all just prayed with their eyes open and didn't give any impression that they're praying. And so they got away with it. And was that a sin? No, it wasn't a sin. Now, why have we got these higher levels? Why is it not like it is in Islam, which means submission? Just submit. God said this, do it. Why has God given us a range of responses? Well, I think it's because he seeks relationship. He doesn't want puppets to just say, well, I did this, I ticked this box, I ticked that box, so there you go. No, he wants relationship. And therefore we have these different levels of response. And it's a way to express love, is it not? If I say to you from this podium, hey, I'm thirsty, can someone get me a drink? Can you just get me a cup of water? Actually, if you get me some orange juice out of the fridge, that would be better. Actually, if you make me a coffee, that would be even better. What are you going to get me if you love me? You're going to get me water, orange juice, or coffee? You're going to get me coffee, right? That's a silly little example, but it gives you the opportunity, doesn't it, to weigh up your relationship with me. And this is, I think, why God has given us that range of response. Not because it's all black and white. You must do this, and if you don't do it, well, that's a fail. It's not like that. It's not like that in relationships. It's not like that in family life, with your children, with your partner. It's not like that, is it? That it's all cut and dried. You do this, and if you don't, well, bang. No. It's a range of response. You know, somebody's birthday. What are you going to buy them? Not necessarily the most expensive thing that you can think of, but what are you going to get them? Is a range of response, isn't there? There's a range of expression, and so it is with God. Now, we're here to remember the Lord Jesus and his death on the cross, and if you see him there, and you reconstruct in your own mind that, 2,000 years ago, whatever, on a hill just outside Jerusalem, on a day in April, on a Friday afternoon, this actually happened. As Paul puts it, the Son of God loved me and gave himself for me. And you get some sense of that I am here and he is there. And he did this for me. Lost, wandering soul that I am. He did this for me. Wow. Wow. You're not going to be a minimalist in your response. You will not make a minimalist response, that, are you? Well, thanks, yeah. Oh, what do you want me to do? Get baptised? Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. No. You're like, Lord, I want to give you my whole life, my whole soul, my whole agendas, my whole decision-making processes are for you. My money, my strength, my anything I've got, the shirt on my back, I will give it to you, Lord. Now, of course, then kicks in our human nature, then kicks in our weakness as persons, that I can't quite do it as I would like to. But okay, fair enough. But that desire for maximal response to him is there and is elicited by the fact that he died for me. And the fact he died for me, I want to die for him. I want to give my life for him. As I say, the human nature kicks in, and as the Apostle Paul says, when I would do good, I find myself doing the wrong thing. And the good that I would like to do, I just don't do as I would like to. Okay, there is all that, and I accept there's all that. But seeing him there, doing that for me, I want to respond to the maximum extent that I can. So, Daniel is an absolute case of faith, isn't it? He is willing to go to a hard death, a very hard death, to be eaten by lions for the sake of what he believes. And, you know, they rolled a big stone there, so there's no way he can get out. And then the king is trying all night to try to get over this problem, labours until the sun goes down. Well, when he says he laboured till the sun went down to try to get Daniel out of it, well, he was actually labouring with himself, with his own pride, because all he had to do was to say, no, guys, I'm the boss here, this isn't happening. That's all he had to do. But he laboured against his own pride, and he couldn't do it. And so then Daniel is put into the den, and the stone is rolled back, and then the king comes in the morning. Has your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to deliver you from the lions? When he says you constantly serve your God, he obviously refers to how you constantly pray to your God. So if you think, well, how can I serve God? I'm just an obscure person with fairly limited opportunities, so we think. What can I do? Well, one way you can serve God is to pray. The king says to Daniel, you continually serve your God, don't you? Well, that service was in prayer, to pray for others. So then, of course, Daniel is alive, and he says, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was innocent before him. And also toward you, O king, I have committed no crime. Well, that's Paul, similar to Paul when he says, I have lived in good conscience before God and man. Now, Jesus was the only person who hadn't sinned, so Daniel obviously sinned. But he says, I was innocent before God. You can be human, you can sin, and yet, because Daniel must have sinned, because only Jesus didn't sin, but he says, I was found innocent before my God. Yeah, you can be found innocent before God, even though you are imperfect. This is what love does. Just as in any relationship, you can see the beloved as perfect, as wonderful before you, even though you know they are not. And that weakness, those weaknesses do not stop that impression and that belief that you have about the beloved. And that is the whole point of what Paul says is being justified, being counted righteous by God because we are in Jesus. That's one reason I encourage folks to get baptized. So, we're here to remember Jesus, and one of the things this looks forward to is the resurrection, because of course Daniel was there apparently in death. They all assumed he was going to die. The stone is rolled away, an angel is sent, the stone is rolled back, and Daniel is alive. It's very similar in outline terms to the resurrection of Jesus. And of course, he was the ultimate one who was innocent before God and man, absolutely. And that's why the grave could not hold him. And he was resurrected. Just one final thought on this, about this Darius. He's the one who took over from the Babylonians. And it's been argued that Darius is a term like Pharaoh. In other words, it wasn't a personal name, it was a title. Yeah, there was no bloke called Pharaoh who ruled over Egypt. They had names, but they were the Pharaoh. In Russian it was the same, the Tsar. The Tsar of Russia was not a personal name, it was a title. And the Darius, it could be argued, was simply a title. So who took over from, in history, who took over from Babylon? Well, it was Cyrus. And I think that this person called Darius, which I'm saying is a title like Pharaoh, like the Tsar, was in fact Cyrus. And when he took over, so Chronicles and that say, and Ezra, as soon as he took over, Cyrus said to the Jews, you can go back. You can go back to your land, you can establish a kingdom, I'll fund it, etc. But he did that immediately as soon as he got into power. And I wonder if he did that after this experience. So in the bigger picture of God's working, this behaviour of Daniel here, which is quite unusual. You can't pray to any god. Or I should go to the lions. Okay, well, he does, instead of praying quietly with his eyes open. God used that to nudge this Cyrus to go and make this great decree for the Jews to go back to their land. So God will work with you. This is the thing. God is not passive. God is not distant. God is real, and God is very involved in human life. And he wants to work with us. And whatever level you want to be on with him, he'll be there to work with you. But I come back finally to my point that there are ranges of response. And when you look at the cross of Jesus, surely that whole thing is designed to elicit from us our all. Even if we don't, as I say, make it in the end because of all the brakes that come on to stop you by, I don't know, nature, society, people around us, human situation. Fair enough. But the main thing is that there is that desire in my heart, in my soul, that I give you everything, that you are everything for me, and I will absolutely, with pleasure in my heart, give you all that I am and all that I stand for. And that is the highest response. Sure, you can respond lower than that. And I'm not saying God doesn't accept that. Just as the other Jews in Babylon who did pray quietly and didn't get into trouble, I'm not saying that God didn't accept them. But Daniel went to that higher level. And that is what the love of God elicits from us. That is why when Paul talks about the breaking of bread, which we're going to do now, in the context of remembering Jesus, he says, let a man examine himself. And I think that when you look at him there, you inevitably do examine yourself. You have to. Because no man can be passive before the fact that Jesus died for me. The two things sort of go together quite beautifully. Thank you.